From the time of Galileo to the James Webb Telescope, science has delivered a great deal of knowledge to our understanding of the universe. However, it is clear that for the last few decades, and especially in the field of physics, advancements have slowed down significantly. Indeed, the troubles with physics are now being hotly debated to the point that serious questions have been asked, spearheading a healthy debate about whether it's time to reconsider some fundamental conceptions. A consensus has been gradually emerging that what the two leading theories of physics, quantum field theory, and Einstein's general theory of relativity, will not easily merge into a single theory of everything without the inclusion of consciousness. The view that the universe is all but wavicles plus gravity seems rather incomplete. Add to this that various anecdotal and not-so-anecdotal phenomena that so far has been labeled as metaphysical remains off-limits for science. The recent UAP videos from the U.S. Navy and the declassification of remote viewing experiments by the CIA, among other things, have removed some of the stigma from at least being able to discuss phenomena classified as paranormal. Regardless, we face a situation with science on one side, promulgating what should and should not be viewed as legitimate research, even as it continues to put lipstick on the pig of orthodoxy. On the other side, we have a metaphysical community that has borrowed on some of the concepts of quantum theory to advance an idea of consciousness based on abstract concepts such as vibrations, frequencies, spiritual energies, and karma. This community, mostly focusing on personal well-being or religious foundations or experiences rather than on actually trying to explain how everything works together. And it must be said that even more formed theories such as biocentrism and panpsychism fail to propose specific mechanics to support their views. There is no doubt that there is a disconnect between what physics describes today and the need to explain aspects most of us deem fundamental to our existence. The problem is that this disconnect has taken us into two separate tracks, which do not seem to intersect as much. And after all, there are many things that were deemed strange in the past and that science has fully explained: eclipses, meteorites being rocks falling from the sky, glowing tides caused by luminescent algae, and so forth. As a matter of fact, a strangeness heat map would still have to include many current scientific concepts. All in all, we have too much questioning on one side, and not enough questioning on the other. And yet, even if we discount beliefs in reincarnation, near-death experiences, UFOs, telepathy, ghosts, fairies, and other phenomena reported through human history, the question of consciousness remains. Yes, science has gone out so far as to deny the very existence of consciousness, but who has not looked at himself or herself at a mirror, and asked ourselves in wonderment, "Who am I?" Ultimately, this video is about trying to answer these two following questions. 1. Is there a framework that accommodates consciousness in a way that is compatible with what is known scientifically, and what would such a framework look like? 2. Could this framework explain any of the high strangeness phenomena, such as UAPs or paranormal events that are currently considered to be outside mainstream science? My name is Israel Del Rio, and I've been fortunate to have gained multi-year experience designing and developing complex information systems architectures. In trying to answer these two questions, I have designed a framework that includes consciousness as a paramount component of a speculative theory of everything, also referred to as TOE. The framework's name is Cocoon, for Cosmological Consciousness Ontology. Granted, we computer people love acronyms. Unlike other hypotheses, Cocoon was developed with an information systems perspective in mind. The approach is not mathematical, but one that incorporates a multidisciplinary system view of several fields: physics, cosmology, neuroscience, and information science. This approach is based on the belief that not a single field of study can support a theory of everything, and it so happens that experience and skills related to information systems can help formulate an integrated and holistic TOE framework. If you think about it, when you look at the extreme complexity of airline reservation and global bank financial systems, or consider the sophisticated algorithms and heuristic rules that make the internet and social media work behind the scenes, using information system practices to create a TOE framework is not far-fetched. These are not, after all, trivial feats of engineering. And so, in the same manner that we might develop a holistic systems architecture with a variety of subsystems, capable of scaling up and handling millions of transactions, we can follow information system steps such as analysis, classification, synthesis, architecting the model, and evaluation to provide an integrated view of consciousness with the universe. In this vein, Cocoon postulates that consciousness emerges from a combination of quantum, information, and entropy phenomena. From an information systems perspective, each of those elements represent a subsystem to be considered. After gathering requirements, which in our case is creating a model for a theory of everything, the next step is to define the tenets for the framework's architecture. Cocoon's first tenet is that it should not violate any known laws of physics, and that it should not assume mystical elements. Secondly, the model should be logically rigorous. While the leading physics theories today are supported by unimpugnable math, they do suffer in explanatory terms. After all, it has been a mantra among physicists to shut up and calculate. Except for simple cases, in computer science it is not possible to mathematically prove that a piece of software is correct. Still, by following best practices, and testing, it is possible to determine if any given piece of software is behaving as expected. Cocoon is still a budding hypothesis, but adding mathematical support to it in the future will be not only possible, but desirable. Thirdly, as with any hypotheses that's trying to explain pretty much everything, we strive to be as comprehensive as possible. Abiding by those constraints, we plead guilty about the model being shamelessly speculative. The fourth tenet is to think out of the box. This is not that different to other proposals such as the idea that we live in a simulation, or that we are in a multiverse, or that the universe is a hologram. Fifth, the model should be as coherent and simple as possible, but not simpler. Finally, the objective is that the model has some predictive value, but most importantly, that it should be explanatory. Ideally, the model will be able to logically explain phenomena not currently covered by scientific orthodoxy. For analysis, we decided to follow a method known as constructor theory. This is a novel approach to science, advanced by physicians Chiara Marletto and David Deutsch. The concept is about establishing factual and counterfactuals to better frame what type of physical laws are possible and which ones are not. A way to understand this method is by following the recently very popular game of Wordle. If you have played this game, you'll know that the purpose is to figure out a 5-letter English word in up to 6 tries. Naturally, the first try is going to be nothing more than an informed guess, based on our general knowledge of the English language. At a minimum, we try a word with 5 different letters, even though some say trying words with plenty of vowels is a better strategy. But I digress. After our first try with the word party, we learn that the letter P is in the right place in the target word, and the letter A is also in the target, but in the wrong place. We have gained some factual and counterfactual information about the solution. Next, we try the word phase. We are lucky. We now have 3 letters in the right location. That's a fact. We also know which letters won't appear in the solution. Those are the counterfactuals. You get the idea. The game continues, and we now try the word plane. Even though we did not learn new facts, we benefit by learning the L and the N are out. Regardless, we should now have enough information to figure out the target word. I will leave it to you to figure it out. Suffice it to say, that the solution is something that the world needs desperately today. Next, I will cover some of the key factuals and counterfactuals followed by Cocoon. For starters, we cannot assume we exist in some sort of multiverse, whether this putative multiverse consists of several universes in separate dimensions or within an infinite space. Likewise, we won't consider a nested multiverse such as those that have been suggested to exist within black holes. After all, universe means one whole. So, we will abide by the concept that there is only one universe. This unique universe is what we normally refer to as the spacetime fabric. For purposes of Cocoon, we will be depicting our universe as a red circle surrounding spacetime, represented by a blue texture. For good measure, we also show hexagons within the universe, with these hexagons representing various lifeforms, humans, animals, politicians, and even lower lifeforms. Sorry. I could not resist. Hexagons could also represent non-terrestrial lifeforms. The picture of a red circle surrounding a universe ruled by quantum fields and gravity, and containing life, is a cosmological factual today. Let's talk about quantum. While it is true that quantum's weird phenomena are most noticeable at the atomic level, it in fact applies to all of our reality, regardless of scale. A breakfast summary of quantum's key features would need to quickly cover superposition, entanglement, measurement, and uncertainty. In quantum, everything is a field described by a wavefunction. While unobserved, the wavefunction is in a superposition state that describes the probabilities for various possible outcomes. The wavefunctions of various fields can be combined into more complex superpositions, and in fact, we say that when two fields that interact with each other get entangled, we are really saying their interaction can create a wavefunction that includes them both. For as long as the wavefunction exists in a probabilistic state, a particle, an atom, or even yourself, could be in any given place or any given state defined by the overall superposition. Remember Schrödinger's cat, being both, in a dead and alive state? Things get curiouser when we observe the wave function. This event is also known as a measurement. When we measure the superposition state, the wave function collapses into a specific measurable value. Think about it, there is an infinitesimally small, yet non-zero chance that your body could materialize anywhere else in the universe when observed. In quantum theory, a measurement collapses the wave function, causing it to adopt one of its probable values. As far as we know, the entangled particle would also feel the effect of this measurement instantaneously even if it resides across the universe. This effect takes place faster than the speed of light. Once a wave function collapses, a new wave function can emerge from it with new probabilistic outcomes. Disentangled particles can then go away their merry ways. Not everything can be measured at will. As per Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, if we try to measure the position of a particle, we will not be able to measure its speed or vice versa. This is because the speed or momentum of a particle and its location are complementary attributes. The same goes for energy and time. This is the reason why experiments show light behaving as a particle when we try find its location, or as a wave when we don't. As it turns out, everything in nature can be realized one way or another depending on the measurement. This is known in physics as the measurement problem, and remains one of the greatest unanswered questions in quantum mechanics. For our purposes, this also puts front and center the role of an observer, and potentially consciousness in determining the outcome of the measurement. Quantum collapses caused by measurements are not said to be reversible. But background quantum noise can decohere superposition states of entangled particles. Decohered states provide no information as they did not result from a measurement. Avoiding decoherence is actually one of the greatest challenges faced by quantum computer engineers. And speaking of quantum computers, the quantum superposition phenomena, combined with the nature of entanglement, and what we are now learning about our brain, can lead us to speculate about the nature of consciousness. But can we tie our physical reality to the quantum? Hameroff and Penrose have suggested a theory referred to as Orch for orchestrated objective reduction, that can provide a mechanism for the intersection of consciousness with spacetime. As per their paper, the Orch proposal suggests conscious experience is intrinsically connected to the fine-scale structure of spacetime geometry, and that consciousness could be deeply related to the operation of the laws of the universe. Orch is supported by the existence of very small organs in our brain, known as microtubules. Each of our 80 billion neurons can contain 1 billion microtubules, and their small dimensions make them less prone to decoherence. Fossils of organisms from the early Cambrian, 540 million years ago, had the ability to avoid decoherence for as long as a minute, perhaps resulting in a rudimentary Orch. This proposal is not so far-fetched given the evidence that organic processes such as photosynthesis, our sense of smell, DNA replication, and the way birds navigate in migrations are also based on some form of quantum processes. Scientists are still trying to figure out how these biological systems avoid the issues of decoherence. Hameroff and Penrose envision a reverse process with the Orch as a mechanism that collapses the wave function of any number of entangled microtubes leading to the creation of consciousness events. The Orch approach suggests a universe with consciousness emerging via evolutionary steps that endowed all eukaryotic cells with microtubules. This mechanism goes beyond the traditional explanation that consciousness is an emergent phenomenon of the interconnection of our neurons, just something that the brain excretes. While Hameroff and Penrose suggest consciousness is supported by microtubules, they do not go as far as to describe a specific mechanism for this. As we shall see later, Cocoon proposes that microtubules act much the same way as Internet routers do, except in helping connect our reality to our conscious entities located elsewhere. In her book, The Science of Can and Can't, Chiara Marletto lists the following 5 information factuals. 1. Information can be set to one of at least 2 states, on and off. This is also in line with information theory's theorem stating that anything can be described via a binary code. 2. For some system to contain information, the on and off states can be communicated and distinguished in some other location. In other words, information must be transmissible. A gossip ain't a gossip if it is a secret. Right? 3. You already know this if you play your MP3 music from your memory stick and your cell phone. Information is substrate independent and interoperable. Information can be copied from one media to another, irrespective of their physical details. 4. For any information transformation to occur reliably, there should be a generalized catalyst that can perform the transformation and retains the ability to cause it again. Sorry, you need an MP3 player of some form. 5. Any catalyst must contain information capable of self-preservation. In other words, there needs to be a component that does not depend on the information is transforming. For example, your Spotify's coding and decoding software has knowledge needed to stream your music, regardless of whether you listen to the Beatles or Justin Bieber. From the field of quantum information, we should add 2 important counterfactuals to this list. The first one is that the informational content of isolated systems does not change in time. In other words, information will always be conserved. Secondly, even though classical information can be copied, as per quantum's non-cloning theorem, it is impossible to create an independent and identical copy of an arbitrary unknown quantum state. The second law of thermodynamics was defined in the 19th century to describe the impossibility of generating work at 100% efficiency. It is a law of nature that any form of energy conversion will always leave some residual energy dissipated into heat. In time, the law was generalized to define entropy as a measure of disorder, and to formally state that in any closed system, entropy must increase or remain the same. There are correlations between information and entropy. Claude Shannon, the father of information theory, provided a formula for information entropy that mirrors the one for thermodynamics. However, because Shannon worked at Bell Labs, his focus was to understand what it would take to safely transmit any given message across telephone wires. His definition for information entropy relates to the description of a message rather than the information the message might be conveying. Shannon himself indicated his theory did not deal with the semantic aspects of communication. To understand the difference, look at the grid to the left. This grid appears more disordered than the grid to the right. From Shannon's perspective, the grid to the left requires more information to be described, precisely because it is highly entropic. The grid to the right can be described with less information, but if you look at the embedded 1 + 1 = 2 message, it is actually delivering more informational meaning. To measure the information provided by a message, we must turn to Kolmogorov's complexity theory instead. Andrei Kolmogorov indicated that the complexity of a message was defined by the number of bits in the shortest computer program capable of printing the message and then halting. While in principle there are close relations between Shannon's information entropy and Kolmogorov's complexity, the two do not always represent the same thing. For example, if Shannon wanted to transmit the text of the U.S. Constitution, Shannon's formula would yield a higher entropy, given the unpredictable sequence of letters in the text. On the other hand, a computer program could describe the message simply as, "This is the text of the U.S. Constitution," and that would show as a low complexity, or entropy under Kolmogorov's approach. Now, a string with 1 million random letters would be measured as having a high entropy by either Shannon or Kolmogorov, since no computer program could be shorter than the actual description of the string. Finally, if we wanted to transmit a string of 1 million repeated letters, this message would show as being of low entropy by both, but in thermodynamic terms, such a homogeneous string, viewed as heat levels, could be viewed as having a high entropy, because it would lack the necessary temperature gradients to generate work. Notwithstanding Shannon's definition, meaningful information requires some structure, whereas a truly random message contains no information. This table shows that Kolmogorov's model better aligns with thermodynamic entropy, once we consider structured, non-random arrangements. Ultimately, we can establish the following two entropy-related factuals. 1. A highly entropic system contains less information, and 2. The physical universe is moving from a state of low entropy to a high entropy while shedding information in the process. We can now cover a bit more about quantum information. As noted previously, quantum information cannot be lost, nor can it be cloned. Furthermore, even though quantum operations and states are normally reversible, according to quantum's unitary principle, observed wavefunction collapses have the effect of increasing entropy, making the quantum collapse non-reversible. In quantum physics, irreversibility during measurements is caused by the observer's acquisition of information about the system. The observer who retains the record of the outcome cannot restore the prior states of both the system and the apparatus. In fact, quantum irreversibility occurs for as long as someone in the universe has kept information on the measurement somewhere. Let's talk now about the nature of reality. The 80 billion neurons in our brain perform a tremendous amount of physical signal interpretation, feature extraction, information analysis, and information storage to create our own model of reality. This model of reality represents a highly synthesized view of the universe out there, one that might not be extremely accurate, but that must be capable of encoding the key elements of the world around us if we are to be able to survive and reproduce. Professor Donald Hoffman argues that what evolution has done is to endow us with senses that hide the truth and display the simple icons we need to survive long enough to raise offspring. Just as with a Windows desktop, houses, snakes, and other perceived physical objects are simply icons in our 3D desktop. These icons are useful, because they hide the complex truth about objective reality. Our senses, he says, have evolved to give us what we need. According to Hoffman, perception is not a window on objective reality. It is an interface that hides objective reality behind a veil of helpful icons. In this example, the objective reality is the electronics inside the computer, and the rules encoded by its software, not the icons. Think about it. Actual reality out there could well be something foreign to us. All that matters is that everything that we perceive and experience is just happening inside our heads. That's why optical illusions are a thing, for they represent a reality that the reality modeling machine in our brain has trouble understanding. On the other hand, don't be fooled. The objective reality behind that icon of a poisonous spider could still kill you. One more item for this analysis regards the question of what is time. As per Einstein's general theory of relativity, we exist in a block universe where time doesn't flow. In a block universe, there is no specific present moment, and the past and the future are relative view states within the block. Past, present, and future exist all at once. This view, however, does not align with Cocoon's simplicity tenet, and it is, frankly, very controversial. Thing is, the view we all seem to share as per our own perceptions, is that time is something that occurs in a linear fashion, with the past being something that has already happened, the present being what we are actually experiencing, and the future meaning something yet to come. This is why we prefer the view put forward by physicists Lee Smolin and Clea Verde in their paper, The Quantum Mechanics of the Present, stating the following. 1. Everything that is real is so in the present moment, which is one of a succession of events. 2. What becomes definite at any event is not arbitrary. Events happen for a reason, which comes from causally prior events. 3. The quantities that become definite at any event are its endowments such as energy and momentum. Each event is brought to happen from their immediate predecessors by the passage of endowments. 4. Only the becoming, the transition from indefinite to definite, is real. To exist is to trace a transitory event, and these transitions are what we call the now, the present. 5. Therefore, the past cannot have any further influence on the present. 6. The direction from indefinite to definite gives the universe an arrow of time. Here, we note that the motion to the future is driven by quantum superposition collapses. Each collapse defines the actual new endowments, and since these collapses are probabilistic, the future cannot be predefined. 7. The quantities that become definite at an event are called the view of the event. Note that this view is also referred to as a measurement or an observation. The resulting views are what we deem to be real. 8. Once an event that was indefinite becomes definite, it cannot immediately reverse and become indefinite again. Once an event happens, it cannot be made to unhappen. We note that this is consistent with the quantum irreversibility counterfactual discussed earlier. In summary, the past is what's been, the present is what we experience right now, and the future is indeterminate. After having analyzed all the factuals and counterfactuals for information, quantum physics, entropy, our modeling of reality, the nature of time, plus possible links between consciousness and quantum, we move to the next framework-making step. From an information systems perspective, this involves performing a synthesis of all factuals under a combined schema, and to do a gap analysis. For instance, if the universe is moving towards a state of maximum entropy, this means it is shedding information in the process. Yet, since the universe is a closed quantum system, information cannot be lost. An obvious gap is, what happens to the information? We also talked about how time is created by the succession of wavefunction collapses. The wave functions are described mathematically via a complex vector space and the use of imaginary numbers, and so there's no physical description for them. Another gap is, what are the wave functions, where do they reside? At least, we can calculate the probabilities for each potential wavefunction collapse outcome. If the collapse occurs because of random decoherence, the outcome is not really being measured and thus can be reversed, but wavefunction collapses caused by measurements are not reversible. For irreversibility to occur, information on the event must be recorded somewhere. Given our relentless march toward maximum entropy, we can infer that information gained this way is being kept somewhere. Where is information obtained from observed wavefunction collapses being stored? Next, there is a view that consciousness is responsible for wavefunction collapse. After all, absent a conscious measurement, no information would be gained, and the collapse could be reversed. The problem with this has been the understanding that the quantum state of an observer and his apparatus would become entangled with the system being observed. If an observer is inside a room and opens the box containing the famous Schrödinger cat, it would collapse the state of the cat into being alive or dead. But, as far as a second observer outside the room is concerned, both the states of the cat and the first observer are still in limbo until she takes a peek at the room. Adding additional observers would be like a never-ending nested Russian doll's paradox. If a conscious observer causes the collapse, which must be true for a non-reversible measurement to occur, how can this happen? Finally, entanglements, as a superposition of quantum states, and their associated collapses, occur instantaneously, at speeds faster than light. Indeed, all quantum phenomena occurs at speeds unconstrained by spacetime. In other words, quantum phenomena are non-local. How or where non-local effects take place? This gap analysis leads to the following possibility. What if there is a universal plane operating as the wave-function complex space, and that also serves as a repository for information, as well as being a channel for the interactions of non-local entanglements? What if conscious entities occupy this plane? Cocoon's model is predicated on the following postulates. We exist in a biplanar universe with our traditional spacetime, as being an entropy-driven plane, and an information plane, ruled by information negentropy, both planes interacting with each other via quantum entanglements. Catalyzing the flow of information between both planes is one of the main roles for consciousness, with conscious entities residing in the information plane. As suggested by Hameroff and Penrose, since microtubules in our neurons can perform quantum processes, Cocoon proposes that these microtubules act as gateways between the two planes, both by facilitating wave-function collapses in the material plane, and by transferring the extracted information from the material plane to the information plane. The information plane has a reverse entropic evolution than the material plane, gradually increasing its information content in line with the material plane's increase of entropy. Other than for quantum phenomena, which is deemed to be truly universal, the information plane is not assumed to abide by the laws and constraints defining the material plane. The potentiality of superposition states in the material plane are defined by wave functions generated from the information plane. Given its role as the universe's information repository, it is reasonable to assume that all cosmic wave function dynamics on quantum fields in the material plane are being generated from this information plane. Because those wave functions are probabilistic in nature, we perceive them as superposition states which collapse upon measurement. It's important not to think of the information plane as another dimension. We're not talking about a place where separate realities may exist, but instead about a complementary plane to what we typically recognize as spacetime. A better conceptualization would be to think of the two planes as the two sides of a coin. However, for the rest of this presentation we will be showing the information plane as a green ring encircling the material plane shown in a blue texture, or as a green layer bordering the material plane. In his book, The Case Against Reality, Donald Hoffman states that perhaps the universe itself is a massive social network of conscious agents that experience, decide, and act. And that if this is so, consciousness does not arise from matter. And that instead, matter and spacetime arise from consciousness, as a perceptual interface. With Cocoon, we elaborate on this view by suggesting that consciousness residing in the information plane arose synergistically along with the emergence of biological organisms able to present their perceptual experiences and reality modeling capabilities to conscious counterparts located in the information plane via a quantum interface. The information plane of the universe itself is populated by a massive network of conscious agents. Entities in the information plane are not constrained by the laws of physics in the material plane, such as the speed of light or gravity. All conscious entities, shown as green spheres, exist in the information plane. Some are connected to the material world via microtubules, others may exist in a detached manner inside the information plane. Each conscious entity can be viewed as a standalone node in a network of entities, utilizing the information plane as a non-local channel. As shown, the information plane is the ultimate repository of all information obtained from the material plane. This is a good juncture to present some definitions. With Cocoon, brain refers to the physical organ located inside our heads, the hardware formed by our physical neurons. Mind, on the other hand, may be thought of as the software running on that hardware. Cognition represents the mind's understanding of reality. We note that current scientific orthodoxy deals primarily with these three components. At most, current science may accept the existence of consciousness as an epiphenomenon of the mind. In the picture and the rest of this presentation, we depict consciousness with green gradients. Hexagons are lifeforms. The figure depicts consciousness in a green gradient inside a hexagon, a living organism. This particular diagram fully abides by the prevalent scientific view that there is just the physical plane inhabited by living organisms, some of them endowed with consciousness. Based on this view, some believe artificial intelligence will soon transcend the limitations of our biological bodies and brain. Given the recent advances with neural networks and pattern recognition, some even claim that sophisticated AI software that's probably conscious has already been developed. There is a raging debate on whether a machine can be conscious. Google's Lambda AI software has even claimed it believes itself sentient. But we don't need to take its word for it. We submit that the most a classical AI can aspire to, is to emulate human-level cognition. We define consciousness as our individual awareness of our unique thoughts, memories, feelings, sensations, and environments, and also that it exists outside the material plane. We do not believe consciousness can occur without the entanglements supported by quantum phenomena, and therefore it is a non-computable element under classical computing. Along these lines, sentience refers to consciousness linkage with sensory and information processing machinery in our brain. There cannot be sentience without consciousness, but it is possible for some conscious entities, unconnected to the material realm, to not be sentient. Consciousness is not an all-or-nothing component but rather something that can exist in different degrees. Animals do have minds, and even if it is not clear they are self-aware in an intellectual sense, they do come equipped with a self-preservation instinct not seen in inanimate objects. It is widely accepted that animals, even low-form animals, are sentient, and therefore they are endowed by some degree of consciousness, no matter how primitive. Finally, we define the soul as being a conscious entity tagged by universally unique identifier formed by its experiences. This is not unlike the universally unique identifier assigned to modern network cards. It is unlikely that low lifeforms like bacteria, who according to our definition may have a proto-consciousness, will also have souls, given that the nature of their experiences would be hardly unique. However, as we move toward more complex lifeforms, we will see that their associated conscious entities can become endowed with their unique soul as a result of their combined experiences. As an analogy, think how a blockchain can gain a unique identity from its transaction history. Furthermore, thanks to quantum's non-cloning theorem, we can ascertain that no uniquely tagged conscious entity or soul can ever be duplicated. So, to reaffirm, Cocoon states that consciousness co-evolved with material plane lifeforms via quantum entanglement interactions facilitated by the appearance of microtubules. Life appeared on Earth about 3.8 billion years ago with single-cell organisms without a nucleus. These so-called prokaryote cells eventually evolved into eukaryotes, single cells with a nucleus. The very first signs of proto-consciousness could have occurred from unicellular eukaryotes known as protists, when these evolved microtubules. The appearance of quantum-capable microtubules could have catalyzed the formation of associated proto-conscious entities in the information plane via quantum entanglements. The hexagons in this figure represent organic entities, whether these are a bacterium, an insect, or an animal. Depending on whether the organism's evolution has provided a path to the information plane, the hexagon will be in the position to act as a gateway between the material plane in textured blue and the information plane shown as a green ring. The picture shows two hexagons with full consciousness, while a couple are evolving a proto-consciousness. Viruses and prokaryotes appear as hexagons without any form of consciousness given that they lack microtubules. The orange boundary in each hexagon represents the senses used by the organism to gather, interpret, and model the spacetime reality. In many ways, our interpretation of reality can be viewed as a summarization and lossless compression of the raw data available in the spacetime fabric. This picture zooms in into one hexagon, showing the consciousness-to-mind interface via a microtubule. While consciousness evolved as a resident form inside the information plane, our brain evolved as part of the material plane, following the evolutionary principles discovered by Darwin. Neuroscience tells us the most basic function of a brain is dedicated to the gathering and extraction of information from the environment. Added evolutionary brain layers in higher form organisms involve the ability to classify, interpret, and store a summary of our experiences in our local memories, in addition to passing a full rendering of the information to the information plane. The conscious entity receiving the information tags it and stores it in the information plane. While the memories stored in your brain may be seen as your local disk files, microtubules can be viewed as home routers, and the information plane can be seen as a form of computer cloud. A cosmic cloud, indeed. Ultimately, flowing information from the material to the information plane and storing it there in a coherent manner is one of the main roles for consciousness. But how does this happen? Since Cocoon proposes the wave functions are generated in the complex space represented by the information plane, physical observations transferred to the conscious entity via the microtubular gateway have the effect to short-circuit the superposition, thus triggering the collapse. So, it is not consciousness itself that collapses the wave function, but a kind of short-circuit in the information plane, formed by the observation that causes the collapse. Note that by having the conscious observer reside outside the quantum state of the event being observed, we avoid the Russian doll paradox of nested conscious observers regressively collapsing the other observer states. Regardless, the collapse of the wave function generates information, whether that information is the position of a particle or its momentum. This measurement is captured by the observer's sense, and it is processed by the observer's mind into cognitive formats that can be transferred to the conscious entity via the microtubules. The end result is both a material plane with higher entropy, and added information in the information plane. After each collapse, a new wave function consistent with the measured results is formed in the information plane and presented to the material plane as a superposed state. A summary of the information acquisition process could be viewed as a sequence of steps moving the measurement of data into processed information. The yellow steps in the diagram represent the work performed by the 80 billion neurons in our brain. First, through our senses, data is collected. Our mind must work to ensure we are capturing the best possible representation of reality. The next step is to obtain knowledge from the data. This involves collating, ordering, and classifying data. The resulting data plus its taxonomy moves the conversion of raw data into knowledge. There are many ways to define taxonomies, and so each of us analyze and interpret the world according to our biases, prior knowledge, and expectations. Cognition is about interpreting the significance of relationships between two or more sets of knowledge, about pattern recognition. Note also that the mind utilizes locally stored data and knowledge to perform needed summarizations. Understanding is the ability to choose between correct and faulty knowledge. Knowledge may be faulty when it comes from bad source data, outright misinformation, or it's based on inappropriate taxonomies or biases. It is the premise of Cocoon that understanding resides inside consciousness, not the physical brain or the mind. True understanding requires correlating with consciousness information that may include non-quantifiable abstract constructs such as purpose, ethics, and morals, and which serve as a foundation for free will. Let's now look more holistically at the Cocoon model. Here we depict a single conscious entity, we shall name Dulce, for definitely unique, living, conscious entity, but keep in mind that the information plane is populated by myriad entities, some connected to the material plane, and some existing fully within the information plane, even if for transitional purposes only. To the right we see a wave function generated from the information plane. Dulce's observation instantaneously loops back to the wave function via the information plane, collapsing it. The superposition state in the material plane then yields several objective observables consistent with the measurement. As an example, let's say that the observable was a tree falling in the forest. Dulce's senses detect these observables, quickly mapping into internal brain states. Feature extraction is a biological process to quickly determine what sensory information is relevant and which one is not. Next, the observables are classified with the help of contextual mapping. She now knows a tree has fallen. This step entails pattern recognition similar to the one performed by our latest neural networking algorithms. It's worth noting that most of the brain and mind chores so far depicted are performed by the neocortex, the 2 mm thick wrinkled surface area of our brain, known to conduct most sensory and cognitive processes. The neocortex does not have the ability to execute actions as it has no cells connecting directly to the muscles, but instead it must send signals to the lower brain to perform physical operations. These lower brain actions are labeled in the diagram as agent. If the classification tells Dulce that the tree is falling in her direction, she will do well to avoid it. In this case, the agent is immediately activated to start evasive action. Meanwhile, the distilled experience goes into a short-term memory, acting as working area for further analysis. The experience is synthesized, made sense of, and logged into the cognition system. A tree just fell down. If the agent has acted, it would also update the cognitive system. Dulce has gained a new experience. The cognition engine performs further analysis of the event with the help of pre-existing long-term memories. A good learning would be, next time don't stand next to a rotten tree. Again, this is a cognitive-level learning ability already achievable by modern AI software. An encoded version of the experience is kept in Dulce's long-term memory. It is well known that our long-term memories are not stored like videos or recordings, but as a series of fragments that can then be collected and reconstructed on demand. This is an efficient and resilient model, but not one that is very reliable. As per Cocoon, the full experience is also passed to the information plane to be stored in a universal event log, associated with Dulce's life experiences. Think of this event log as a form of blockchain. Interestingly, this is not unlike the so-called Akashic record, described by Theosophy beliefs. The existence of a detailed record of experiences can explain eidetic memory, the ability of some people to completely recall past events for almost any day of their existence. While most of us have access to the no-so-reliable long-term memory, often resulting on false or distorted memories, people with eidetic memory may be capable to directly query memories stored in the universal event log. It might be that hypnosis and other mind-altered states could also achieve this kind of access. The green sphere represents Dulce's conscious entity. While residing inside the information plane, it is connected to the brain via the microtubules. It is estimated that each of our 8 billion neurons can contain 1 billion microtubules. Most microtubules deal only with biological functions such as moving proteins around a cell, or potentially performing classical-level computations. But if only a small portion is involved in quantum phenomena, we could be carrying the equivalent of a quantum computer with millions of qubits in our head. Think about it, IBM just announced the most powerful quantum computer to date with 127 qubits. In addition of establishing quantum entanglements with Dulce, the microtubules are also part of our physical brain structure and can physically exert influence on our neurons. Microtubules are ideally positioned to be the interface between both planes. Under this model, free will and self-awareness are taking place in the information plane via quantum processes. These processes draw information primarily from the knowledge stored in the information plane. The model suggests that conscious decisions originate in the information plane and can be communicated back to the cognition system, or even directly to the execution agent, if necessary. In some experiments, neuroscientists with brain probes can predict whether a subject is choosing one of two options even seconds before the subject herself knows her own choice. This finding has been used to argue that belief we are making decisions on a free will basis is just an illusion. With Cocoon, the experiment can be explained by a conscious entity deciding and then communicating the decision to the action agent of the brain and the cognitive module. While the action agent's job is to immediately execute any received command, the cognitive module must fully inspect and understand and store any received input. When it comes to decisions on action-driven choices, as opposed to decisions based on intellectual choices, the cognitive module will generally become aware of the decision a few milliseconds after the action agent have already reacted to the decision. This effect is what's being detected by the experiments. So, there you have it. The wave function is now reset with the endowments resulting from the tree-falling measurement. Time has been moved forward, the material plane has gained in entropy, and the information plane on information. Dulce is ready for her next experience. So far, we have described how conscious entities like Dulce entangle with the material plane. Cocoon also proposes that Dulce can get entangled with other conscious entities in the information plane. For instance, Cocoon posits that shared conscious observations establish an entanglement between the observing consciousnesses. The entanglement strength is being defined as a correlated consciousness experiences, or CCX for short. This is a generic term that could well be calculated with von Neumann entropy, which quantifies the amount of information present in a system, and the amount of entanglement between quantum systems. In any case, the more shared experiences two conscious entities have, the more those two will be entangled, and the stronger their CCX index. Direct communications through the information plane between conscious entities are also possible, with the ease in which those interactions can happen, depending on their CCX. Interestingly, since these entanglements occur within the information plane, they are likely to outlast the detachment of the conscious entity from the material plane. Since the communications channel established between the conscious entity and the physical mind via microtubules is bidirectional, it is not unreasonable to assume that, under the right conditions, such as dream states, entangled conscious entity communications can be propagated into the physical mind. Finally, since information gathered by a conscious entity is stored in the information plane, something akin to a tag or index is added to the storing entity's tag list. These tags can be seen as indexes to access the exact memory of experiences from the information plane. Note that the accumulated tag list can represent a universally unique identifier for each conscious entity. This unique identifier can be referred to as the soul. Shared experiences can generate same or similar memory tags, and these can provide another degree of entanglement between conscious entities. Literally, we can say that tightly entangled entities are soulmates. Again, the more entanglements, the stronger the CCX, and the easier for the entangled entities to share their existence via the information plane. We will talk more about CCXs and conscious entity entanglements in our next video, since we believe this feature is key in explaining much of what has been reported as strange phenomena. In summary, the cocoon model just described has the following characteristics. It places consciousness at the center of the universe. It defines consciousness as a timeless, evolving entity. It also defines a mechanism for consciousness to evolve. This mechanism relies on consciousness gaining and keeping information acquired via experiences in the material plane. It informs how consciousnesses are universally unique and cannot be cloned. This follows quantum's no-cloning theorem, stating that it is impossible to create an independent and identical copy of an arbitrary unknown quantum state. It also establishes a mechanism under which conscious entities gain unique identities, based on their experiences. In other words, how the concept of soul emerges. It suggests the existence of a universal information repository. It suggests a mechanism, aided by Hameroff and Penrose's microtubule hypothesis, on how consciousness connects with the physical plane. It establishes a link for how consciousness interacts with the quantum superpositions, and functions as a catalyst to trigger the wavefunction collapse upon observation. It is consistent with the laws in the physical plane, including what is known about how our senses, our brain, and our mind work to gather and process information. It establishes a mechanism for the entanglement of conscious entities. It provides a reason why classical computing will never create strong artificial sentience. In line with Smolin and Verde, it provides a guidance to better understand the past is not repeatable, but that it can be accessed, and that the future does not yet exist. It provides a framework for consciousness to exercise free will. As a bonus, the model may explain many phenomena currently defined as strange. The next video will discuss how Cocoon could expand what science is able to explain. Check the link below. Phenomena to the right of the strangeness heat map may turn green. Admittedly, the next video will require you to suspend some disbelief around phenomena considered paranormal so far. But hopefully, in line with our information systems methodology, it will not also help to test the model, but it will be full of fun and intriguing hypotheses. The third video in the series will try to answer how the Cocoon framework could have come about. There, we will explore if there is a cosmology that can explain the biplanar characteristics of the model, and we will speculate on what's the stuff that consciousnesses are made of. In the cosmological model described in that video, we do not presume there were such things as a Big Bang, or inflation, but we will again lean heavily on quantum phenomena to propose a possible cosmic genesis. A fourth video will be more philosophical in nature. Is there an answer to why we exist? Is there a God? What is the nature of good and evil? Is there a purpose to it all? Will the universe come to an end? Of course, we aren't promising that Cocoon has an answer to any or all of those questions. It might even be that Cocoon is completely wrong, or not even be worthy of being deemed wrong, but, so what? Open minds are all is needed for consideration in this exciting journey of discovery. Thanks for watching.